All right, you all asked for it, so here I am. Top cards of Legends of the Force. There's some absolute bangers in here, and there are some that have some really good potential that I think some people are really sleeping on. With that said, I'm going to dive straight into the list with a big thank you to my patrons over on Patreon, guys. Again, if you haven't heard before, I'm head of the Galactic Championship. I'm sure I'll see a lot of you there if you're attending, but also I'm going to be doing a patron meet. If you want to check it out, check out the Patreon down below. But let's dive into the first one here. All right, let's start ourselves off in the uncommon area with a new Ezra Bridger. 3-cost ground unit in Vigilance, Heroism, 3/5 Force Jedi Rebel Spectre. Lots of relevant tags there. In fact, all 4 relevant. On attack, you may give an experience token to another creature or Spectre unit. So let's talk about base cost. We got 3 cost, or base resources, I should say. 3 cost, 3/5. Okay, pretty reasonable. Perfectly average. Nothing too crazy to expect there and nothing to complain about. Okay, let's add some sprinkles on there. Okay, we got a Force unit, so it works with Force Throw, and the Force is with me, and any other Force cards. And of course, any Force synergies from the new set. Works with the new Force common bases. We have the Jedi tag, which also is minorly relevant, but still relevant in some certain circumstances, like General's Blade. We have the Rebel tag, of course, if you have any Rebel synergies, but I'll say this one actually matters less than all the other tags here, because even though Rebel synergies were so high in previous sets, usually you're not playing Ezra in a Rebel deck. Instead, the most important tag here, Spectre. It's a Spectre tag, which means it works with the new Kanan, it works with the Ghost, it works with the Sabine's Masterpiece, a lot of the Spectre cards that you're really doing well with. Guess what? Spectre comes in and he actually benefits from that. But that's not all. The on attack trigger. Talk about how Spectre units matter. Well, guess what? Your now Sabine's Masterpieces that you're playing, your Sabine Wrens that you're playing on turn 1, any other Spectre unit now can get an experience token on the following turn. If you think about how this curves out, turn 1 you're playing a Spectre unit, turn 2 you're playing Ezra Bridger. Maybe you're not even playing a Spectre unit, but you're playing like Lothwolf, which is a new creature unit, 3/3 Sentinel. You're playing Ezra on turn 2. Let's say the turn 1 unit dies and you don't even have another unit to put an experience token on. Well, guess what? On turn 3, you could still play Kanan's and then attack with Ezra, get an experience token over there. It's actually just a little bit of value. It's nothing too insane, but it just generates that enough value to where this 3-drop is actually really, really strong at messing with your opponent. And again, you still have to worry about everything else. And it does combo really well with other Spectre units in that, like, a lot of them cost 3 in that range, 3 or 2 or even 4 resources. And so you can pair that with other cheap events like the Force Throw, as I was mentioning. So really just high value 3-drop. All right, Ezra is good and all, but we got to talk about one of the best cards from the new set in Darth Vader. This is a 6-drop ground unit in Vigilance Villainy. It's a 5/6 Force Imperial Sith. When played, you give a shield token to a friendly unit and to an enemy unit, and on attack, you defeat an enemy unit with a shield token on it. So once again, we'll start at the base resources. It's a 6-cost, 5/6, essentially giving itself shielded and something shielded onto your opponent's units. Okay, let's say you do that, your opponent just attacks into your Darth Vader, so now you've got a 6-resource 5/6. Like, that's like worst case scenario. Okay, that's pretty mediocre, right? Worst case scenario, it's pretty mediocre. Let's talk about middle case scenario, where you play Darth Vader, it's a 5/6, you put a shield token on Darth Vader, but you also put a shield token on their space unit, and they can't get rid of the shield token. Well, now you've got Darth Vader coming in, next turn you attack, you get to defeat their space unit, and you get to go ahead and maybe attack another unit or attack base. So you've killed a unit, and you got Darth Vader left behind. Okay, pretty good. Now let's talk about building around Darth Vader, which I think is 100% worth it. And it's not super hard. ECL is the name of the game here. If you've got ECL as your base, you ECL out Vader, you put a shield token on Darth Vader, you put a shield token on whatever unit they want, including leader units, and you ambush into their other unit that they have, or you can just ambush into that unit that you put a shield token on, and now it's a 6-resource 5/6 that just killed a unit, or a 6-resource 5/6, by the way, that one had shielded, or a 6-resource 5/6 that no longer has shields, but killed one unit and defeated another unit with the on-attack trigger. It's nasty, okay? The ECL works, but I've also seen it timely intervention out. I've also seen the yellow one, which I forget the name of, but that also is 1 cost and can ambush a Force unit out. Chien Flurry, that's the card. There's so many different options with this one, and it's so powerful that entire decks are kind of moving into ECL in some cases just to take advantage of Darth Vader. So again, very, very powerful card. Next, we're going to talk about is Kelleran Beq. This is a 7-cost ground unit in Command Heroism. It's a 7/7 Force Jedi Republic. It's got the when played, search the top 7 cards of your deck for a unit, reveal it, and play it. It's going to get a 3-cost reduction. So first off, 7-cost 7/7, pretty decent stat line. Okay, and the most comparable card to this is the Darth Vaders of the world, the 7-cost Darth Vader. You get 2 more power points, but you don't get ambush. So I don't think Kelleran Beq is as good as Darth Vader. Obviously, Darth Vader is one of the best cards in the entire game, and you deploy it, you get an ambush, you get a unit off the top of your deck. Same thing as Kelleran Beq. But Kelleran, although you don't get the ambush, which is a big downside, you actually get some bonuses to make up for that. As I said, you get 2 points of extra power. And more importantly, you don't have to be limited by a specific aspect. Vader obviously only allows you to have villainy units to pick from, and it's only 3 or less cost units. Yes, you can choose multiple different costs as long as it adds up to 3, but Kelleran Beq is interesting in that you pick a unit and it just costs 3 less, which means if you got enough resources, you could be playing Kelleran Beq, and then let's say you're on 11 resources, you can be playing Luke Skywalker off the top of your deck. Straight up. Right? You could be playing a 4-drop, a 5-drop, and if you have 8 resources or 9 resources, which does often happen in these mid-range battles. But even just as it is, you could still play Kelleran Beq as a 7/7 and then get a 3-drop from your deck and put it onto the battlefield. It's just kind of a high-value mid-range unit, similar to how people were playing Home 1, right? When you're playing Home 1, you're just kind of playing it because, ooh, it's a big fat space unit, 7/7 body, and you get in with restoring, and then you can play something from your discard pile. Really, really solid stuff. And it also similarly costs less, but that Home 1 costs 8 resources. And Kelleran Beq can come down on 7 resources. And even more so than that, it is a ground unit and it is a force unit, so it matches some tags. And ground unit is oftentimes more relevant to stabilize the board than space units, which is pretty important. And because it's a force unit, it also works with all your force synergies that you might be looking for. Those are minor points towards Kelleran Beq. Really, the big thing is that it acts similarly to Vader without the ambush, which again is a downside. Absolutely, I don't think this is as good as Vader, but it's the closest we've got to Vader in the heroism side of things, which we didn't have anything too crazy close, because I don't think Home 1 really does the same thing that Kelleran Beq does realistically in that stage of the game, because it comes down a turn earlier, and instead of waiting from your discard pile, you can look through your deck, which is nice. So kind of similar in strategy, but I think just a little bit better than Home 1. All right, and for the next one, I know some of you are going to love that I included Shin here on the list, but we've got 3-cost ground unit, Cunning Villainy, 4/2 Force Fringe. It's got hidden and shielded. It's a very straightforward unit, but honestly has been one of the more impressive units that has been added to the set. 3-cost ground unit that's a 4/2 seemingly is pretty bad. The shielded portion of it makes it really quite interesting. Now, 2 toughness is a downside, no questions asked. Perilous Position takes it out. Make an Opening takes it out. Basically, all the -2s of the world do take it out. And that is, something to worry about. If you remove the shield, yes, another unit can go ahead and take her out. But here's the 2 nice combinations of it. She's got hidden, which means one of your smaller units that they have is probably unlikely to be able to attack her on that turn, which means she's most likely going to be able to live to the next turn, even if they're trying to take out the shield and then attack her. The other thing is, because she's got 4 power, if you're trying to attack her, it's very likely it's just a trade in the course of a game. Or what happens is, if they do attack, they just lose their unit and Shin's still around because of the shield token. It makes her a very aggressive unit. And the cherry on top is that she has the force tag, which means it's likely for her to be able to attack to generate the force. It's likely for her to be able to combo with force throws or any other force synergies that you have. It's actually a really overall, just all these little minor pieces kind of stack up to provide a pretty powerful unit. And similar to how Crafty Smuggler works, where, oh, it's a 2/2, like, can't you just kill it and move on with your life? Actually, no. Crafty Smuggler is actually one of the more impactful units because it's kind of annoying to deal with. And the same thing goes with Shin here. Talk about one of the best reasons to be playing a force deck in Villainy. We've got Darth Tyranus. This is a 4-cost ground unit in Villainy. It's a 4/3 Force Separatist Sith. It's got shielded, and it's got while the Force is with you, this unit gains ambush. Pretty straightforward, extremely powerful. Of course, you could do the silly thing where you're playing Count Dooku as your leader, you play Porg, and then you play Darth Tyranus, which is a turn 1 shielded 4/3, right? Pretty cool, but that's not really how it happens in typical games. So what happens generally is you're playing your cards, you've got your Force generating, you drop a Darth Tyranus, and it usually will knock out a unit and be left behind as a 4/3, okay? The other scenario, which is a little bit more rare, but does actually happen reasonably often, is you drop him and you take out a 2-powered unit, like a Yaddle or something, or a Yoda, and you make it so that he takes the damage first and then gets his shield token. So what happens is you get a 4/1 shielded, which is still really obnoxious, right? And it's just kind of hard for your opponent to deal with a Darth Tyranus. You can also equip things like Darth Revan's lightsabers or things like that, which really buff up his overall power, especially if you've taken damage already, because you can really buff him up to where he's like an 8/1. I've seen that very, very common, or an 8/3 rather. So definitely a lot of options with Darth Tyranus, but more often than not, it's just, hey, I'm curving out, and I curved out into an ambushing unit that didn't die. Think of it as like Zuckuss, where Zuckuss was played just because he was good and it would ambush some of the early units and stick around. This is very similar on that note, but even more so, in some cases, strong, because while Zuckuss was a 4/4 and he would take damage and be left behind as a 4/1, in the cases where your opponent also has like a 4-powered unit, it doesn't trade. It actually kills it and it sticks around. So Darth Tyranus actually performs better oftentimes than Zuckuss, or not Zuckuss. Did I say Zuckuss earlier? I meant 4-LOM, than 4-LOM as a 4-drop, with the exception of when Zuckuss comes down and the combo comes off, right? That's the only thing that Darth Tyranus can't do. But overall, in terms of, 1-for-1 scenarios, 4-LOM versus Darth Tyranus, I'd actually rather have Darth Tyranus if I can naturally fit it into my Force-based deck. Another very powerful legendary of Darth Vader on the list, and now we got Anakin Skywalker. This one's a 6-cost ground unit in Vigilance. It's a 5/7 Force Jedi Republic. When played, if there's a Heroism card in your discard pile, you may give a unit -3/-3 for this phase, and it's also true for a Villainy card. So if you have a Heroism card and a Villainy card, you can give 2 different instances of -3/-3 to any units as you choose. This is exceptionally powerful. So again, talk about the fail case. 6-cost ground unit, 5/7. You basically get -3/-3 guaranteed, because almost every single deck is going to have either a Heroism card or Villainy card in your discard pile by the time you get to 6 resources. And if you do not, something's probably gone crazy in that game, okay? But things like Power of the Dark Side, Spark of Rebellion, like all your events that have Heroism or Villainy attached to it also function, right? So you're almost guaranteed to get a 6 resource 5/7 -3/-3 when it comes down, which is very powerful. It turns out that that's honestly good enough in a lot of situations. It can help you trade on the ground arena, and it comes down on the same turn that a lot of leaders deploy. So if they deploy like a 4/7 or a 4/6 or whatever it is that they're deploying, it usually shrinks down to like a 1/4 or a 0/4 or something of that nature, to where another unit can come in and easily finish it off, which can be very powerful in certain circumstances. But oftentimes what also happens is you just finish off a unit. It comes down as a 5/7, you kill a unit. And that's very, very impactful, especially when you get that immediate impact on your board and you can utilize all of your resources in a single action. That's the key, is that it really gives you a big tempo advantage. And then you're also left with a 5/7 body, which is really solid, right? 6/7 is kind of what I'd be expecting at a 6-drop, is kind of what I want. So it's just underneath that, but a 5/7 still very, very good. It's nice toughness to pair with a good amount of power to deal with a lot of units. And again, you get that effect. But here's the kicker. If you're able to activate both sides of these things, this card is absolutely broken. Absolutely broken. Okay? This thing comes down and you drop a -3/-3 on 2 separate units. And it's like, oh my gosh, you've killed 2 separate units that were like close to being dead, or you've shrunk down a unit and you killed off another unit, or you just piled them on the same unit and took out a unit. It's basically like as powerful as a Luke Skywalker is when Luke Skywalker comes down the turn after. Because remember, Luke Skywalker is a turn later, which really benefits Anakin because it's on a key portion of the curve, which is 6-drop. 6-drop is when those leaders usually deploy. So very, very powerful. And again, even in the fail case, it's still exceptionally strong. I think this is like secretly a strong one. I think this is probably my hottest take, maybe it's not even a hot take, but Secretive Sage. This is one that I think a lot of people just tend to forget about. This is a 2-cost ground unit, Vigilance, 2/2 shielded. It's basically Crafty Smuggler, but in Vigilance, except it's significantly more powerful because guess what? It's got the Force tag. So there's not a whole lot to talk about this thing, right? It's a 2-cost 2/2 shielded. It's basically as knowing as Crafty Smuggler. It's going to survive a lot of attacks because of the shielded effect. It's going to get in a lot of damage, but it also functions as a way to enable all of the potential Force synergies that you have in your deck. If you're looking for a unit to attack to generate the Force token, this is your person. If you're looking for something to activate Force Throw, guess what? Secretive Sage has got you. If you're looking for some other reason to have a Force unit on the board, Secretive Sage is very likely to survive because it's early enough to where your opponent probably doesn't have much removal to actually take care of it. And it's also got shielded to where your opponent can't attack it to deal with it. So very, very simple unit. And don't get me started on the Garth Saxons of the world. Okay, Garth Saxon is incredible now, but Secretive Sage does a lot of work here for the deck in general. It really just works with all the Force synergies and just is a persistent unit. And again, we've seen how powerful Crafty Smuggler can be. And this is literally just Crafty Smuggler, but in Vigilance. And it's not even necessarily specifically for villainy like Krennic was. And we've seen Krennic do some good work as well. It's been slotted into a lot of decks, but this one arguably is even stronger because of that Force tag. It really depends on the deck because Krennic is just so immensely powerful too in certain decks. So I can't really make that statement, but yes, Secretive Sage, just put it on your radar, okay? Put it on your radar. Maybe this is a hot take. I think it's one of the better cards of the set. Next up, we've got Eeth Koth. This is a 4-cost ground unit in Command Heroism. It's a 5/4 Force Jedi Republic. It's got when defeated, you may use the Force. If you do, you put this card into play as a resource. Very straightforward, but also extremely powerful. This one, I think, is something that a lot of people were thinking about when we first saw the initial spoiler. And to be honest, there's quite a few on here that I'm like, oh yeah, this seems pretty powerful. Eeth Koth comes down, he's a 5/4, which means he's most likely going to be trading with a significant portion of whatever units your opponents are playing. Like their 4-drops, if they're playing Kanans, it trades. If they're playing even the 3-drops, like even if you're just trading with a 3-drop, that can oftentimes be more impactful than Super Laser Technician can be. Here's the thing. Do I think this is better than Super Laser Technician? I don't actually think that it's better than Super Laser Technician. It's comparable, but better for different reasons and worse for different reasons. So Super Laser Technician, similar effect when it's, when defeated, you get the resource, right? Super Laser Technician comes down on 3 resources, which I think is a better portion of the curve than 4 resources with Eeth Koth. The other portion of Super Laser Technician that is different is that the resource comes up readied immediately, which also does do some nice work. Like you can deploy a 6-drop the next turn, whereas Eeth Koth, if you deploy him on 4 resources, the next turn you would have 5. And then if you get Eeth Koth killed, it's now you're on 6 resources, but you can't play a 6-resource play. So that's something that makes Super Laser a little stronger. And arguably the most important part is that you have to have the Force. So Super Laser Technician, one of the best cards in the entire game. So saying that it's worse than Super Laser Technician isn't saying a whole lot against Eeth Koth. But a lot of people, and including myself, were like, hey, I wonder how this compares to Super Laser Technician. Guess what? I think it's a little bit weaker. But if you're playing a mid-range style of deck and you don't necessarily care about the immediate ready-up resource and you're already kind of utilizing the Force, think of like Avar, right? Just I get the Force whenever I want. Boom, I get to deploy Eeth Koth and I have the Force. Or, other value decks which already generating the Force, that's not really an issue for it. And then you just got a 5/4 that could trade with like K2SOs and your Kanans and whatever else that you decide to play. So it's actually quite strong. It could definitely work pretty well in a more mid-rangey style of Command Heroism. Talk about a card that has been pretty good with the Force, similar to Darth Tyranus, is Sorcerous Blast. This one's pretty straightforward. It's a 1-cost event in aggression. Use the Force. If you do, deal 3 damage to a unit. So you basically just get a really, really cheap way to deal a bunch of damage to units. And oftentimes this is enough to deal with turn 1 plays. But it can also finish off other plays, especially if you have any form of additional damage outside of it. But the thing about this is that it's so cheap that it works so well across all portions of the curve, really. You can drop, some of your more expensive units, but guess what? You got that one resource left over, and Sorcerous Blast comes in, and it's pretty relevant throughout the game. Just an extra 3 damage wherever you need it. And I think that's the real key about Sorcerous Blast, is it's just so cheap. Whenever you have a card that costs like 1 or even 0 resources, you have to take a double look at it if it's providing a powerful effect. And this is 3 damage to a unit is a powerful effect. Now, you do need to use the Force, so this obviously does not function in a deck that doesn't have the Force. But this is a good payoff for decks that are generating the Force. And this is something to think about. Sorcerous Blast, in decks that can utilize the Force, this is one of the most powerful cards. And I do think that using the Force does come into play in a lot of the decks so far. So we'll see how common the new Force bases are, but I could definitely see if they are usable and kind of used in some of the more meta decks, Sorcerous Blast being an option for those decks. And lastly, we've got Jedi Consular. So there's a couple cards in this list that I kind of slotted in because I think there's a pretty defined like top 5, top 6, top 7 around that area. But then when you get to like the last 3, and I'm including like Secretive Sage, Jedi Consular, and potentially like Sorcerous Blast in this category, you can definitely make arguments for other options, but I'm going to make the argument for Jedi Consular here, which is a 2-cost ground unit in command heroism. It's a 1/4 Force Jedi. It's got the action to use the Force. You can play a unit from your hand, and it costs 2 less. So this is just one of the most scary cards in the entire game if you're not able to deal with it. And there's a lot of decks that can really utilize it. Any command vigilance deck is really where Jedi Consular becomes real scary. So Ivar, Obi-Wan blue with like Virgin's Temple. It's one of the cards or one of the bases that's used pretty frequently in some of the Force-based decks, because what happens is, let's say you have the initiative. You play Jedi Consular. It's a 1/4. Your opponent plays a unit. You immediately generate the Force, and you've got a 1/4 that can play any 5-drop from your hand on the next turn because you've generated a Force. Straight up. And that's not an uncommon, like that's not a really rare thing to happen. Even if you don't have the initiative, your opponent has to find some way to deal with Jedi Consular on turn 2. And if that's like a Power of the Dark Side or something of that nature, your other unit, any unit you would have played at that point, would have died all the same because they're killing off a unit, right? For the most part, if there's a shield token involved, then maybe not. But this is the power level of Jedi Consular. Okay, let's say you don't want to index super hard into Virgin's Temple and you're just playing a Force deck. Well, guess what? This does have Force synergies. You can attack with this to generate the Force token, and it still does function throughout the game. The powerful part, outside of just getting that turn 2 amazing play, is that you can keep doing this. Like, let's say turn 1, you play a good play, you get an ambushing out unit. Like, let's say you play Blue Leader on turn 2. Because you can play any unit and you ambush and you kill their ground unit. And now they have to play another unit to deal with Jedi Consular. Well, guess what? Next turn, you're going to generate the Force token again with Virgin's Temple. And you can play a 6-drop. And then you can play a 7-drop. And then you can play an 8-drop. It scales out of hand really, really quickly. It's a very, very big snowball card. It definitely does have its like weak potential. Like if you draw it later on in the game with a lot of 2-drops in general, it's not as strong. But in the early game, this is one of the most threatening cards in the entire game from set 5. Like, there are very few situations where when my opponent's playing Virgin's Temple, when they start with Jedi Consular, I feel like I've already lost. Because again, there are so many ways you can construct your deck. Like, even if you just go like Eeth Koth turn 2, and that's just 1 extra resource count reduction, like you've played a 5/4 on turn 2 and you're still generating value. That's the key with Jedi Consular. You don't have to get a lot of value, but if you get a couple resource count reduction, the 2 resources that you invested in Jedi Consular has kind of paid for itself, and that's the key. And that's the 10th card on our list. These are the best cards from Legends of the Force. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Did I snuff a card? Did I put a card that you don't think should be on this list? What about Secretive Sage, Jedi Consular? We've got cards like Shin, Kelleran, Darth Vader. I think a lot of these most people agree with if you've been playing the new set. Like if you've got an ECL'd Vader, it literally just feels like you cannot win. If you've played against, Darth Tyranus and they curve out with the Force synergy, you're like, ooh, it's so tough to beat. Or even just seeing a Shin on the opposing side of the battlefield, you're like, dang, how do I, get through this without really messing up everything that's going on right now? You'll know what I mean by a lot of these cards. Of course, I'm not always right. In fact, I am very frequently a lot of cards that are not on my radar, and a lot of people bring them up to my attention. So I'm really curious to hear what you all have to say, and I'll see you all for the next one.